Let's get reaction to this now. Professor Adam Ramey, Associate Professor of Political Science at New York University, Abu Dhabi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us. I'm going to get your thoughts in a second. First of all, let's remind ourselves what happened last night. Donald Trump reversing course on many of the big tariffs, flat 10% across the world, but 125% for China. This is Scott Bessent speaking last night. He's the US Treasury Secretary. He was wheeled out in the White House Rose Garden to explain what happened and why everyone else is getting a reprieve except China.
As I said a week ago today, don't retaliate, hold your ground, let's see what happens. And China, they kept escalating and escalating, and now they have 125% tariffs that will be effective immediately.
Professor Ramey, what was your reaction when you saw this news last night?
Well, on a personal level, I was elated to see my retirement account has bounced back. But on a political side, I mean, in some sense, this is not surprising. Trump has said throughout the process that this was not a negotiation tactic. But I think we all kind of knew, at least in our hearts, or at least we hoped we did, that it was. And that does seem indeed to be the central motivation behind Trump's behavior. After the announcement, but Trump and senior members of his White House team had said, after we made the initial tariff announcements, over 75 countries reached out to the White House trying to negotiate and get things down. And basically, this is this tariff reversal is largely a reward for all of those countries and essentially was a bargaining chip to get them to the negotiating table. Obviously, China is still a massive loser in this because the one country that is not being exempted for this initial 90-day period is the People's Republic, and their tariff rate is quite whopping.
Yes, so how significant is the fact that the trade war with China is escalating?
Well, I mean, I think that this one was a political winner for Trump, right? The across-the-board tariffs, the markets clearly responded in deep negative territory last week as a consequence of those announcements. But the tariffs against China on geopolitical grounds are something that are popular with the mass public, and it'll be curious for me to see how Xi Jinping responds. Does he continue to hold a firm line against the United States, or does he try to take a more conciliatory approach and try to get the tariffs down to what all these other countries seem to be enjoying?
In terms of just a policymaking approach, Adam, you're a professor of political science. How do you interpret not so much what he's doing, but the methods he's using?
Look, Trump is a unique character in American politics, and his approach is sort of brash. It's come out the door swinging. It's something that is very different from the more delicate touch of previous administrations and probably future ones to boot. But I think Trump is very much about doing things. That's been his campaign pledge since day one. Washington has been doing things for the average American worker and the average American voter. And I think that this is yet another one of these things in the last, just over 2 months of the Trump administration, in which he's doing something that seems quite radical, but I think it's a signaling mechanism. He's telling the American public, I'm doing, even if necessarily it's not popular. He said, I'm doing it for you. And I think Trump's backing down a little bit here is his way of sort of reassuring everybody else in the American political system that he hadn't completely gone off the rails.
And how significant is the infighting that we've seen within the Republican Party, or specifically within the MAGA camp? I'm thinking about Peter Navarro, trade advisor, the guy who wrote the book Death by China, fiercely advocating for tariffs. Elon Musk, another advisor to President Trump, obviously owns a major car manufacturer, calling Peter Navarro a moron. How significant are those machinations behind the scene in the policy-making decisions?
Quite a bit. And pushing further beyond the White House to Congress, Republicans in Congress have remained in lockstep with President Trump since before the new administration was even inaugurated. But this issue, this trade war, was one of the issues where significant numbers of Republicans in the House and Senate were starting to show cracks in their support of Trump. And with such narrow majorities, if Trump wants to get his agenda through Congress, he can't afford even a few defections, let alone significant ones. So I think that the Trump administration realized it had to quickly reconcile warring factions in order to get through the major agenda points that Trump wants. But trade is just one of them. At the end of the day, the Trump coalition, it was a motley crew. It was a combination of these sort of wealthy tech entrepreneurs out of Silicon Valley, the Elon Musk Palantir crowd on the one hand, as well as Trump's America First, MAGA, pro-tariff folks on the other side. And this issue on the issue of international trade was always going to be one that was going to be a significant breaking point between the two of them. I'm glad, at least for the moment, there appears to be a ceasefire, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this come back out to the open very soon.
Adam, what are the ripple effects for us here in the UAE? You're a professor of political science at University Abu Dhabi. I know if I was a student in your class at the moment, I'd be putting my hand up saying, Professor Ramey, what does it mean for us here in the UAE?
Well, I mean, I think at the moment, look, Trump has always been a good friend of the UAE, politically and economically. I think that was going to be true no matter what. But I think that in an economy that is so heavily dependent on international trade as we are here, and as integrated as we are into the international economy, having Trump take a much more conciliatory approach on tariffs and a much more cooperative conversation, I think ultimately is going to be good for both the UAE markets as well as the everyday people, because at the end of the day, tariffs are a tax, and they're a tax that gets passed on to the consumers, and we do not want to be going to supermarkets paying more, at a time where inflation has eaten away at a lot of people's standard of living.
Professor Ramey, great talk to you. Appreciate your time. That's Professor Adam Ramey, Associate Professor of Political Science at NYU Abu Dhabi.